Hey, welcome everyone. This is State Building Co-Council IBC Technical Advisory Group for Thursday, October 9th, 2025, and we will try to take roll, please.
All righty. Todd Byerther,
Here.
Roger Herringa, let us know he wouldn't be available today. Joe Mayo, not seen in the room. Shay Fortaleza,
Present.
thank you. Tim Woodard, not seen in the room. Steve Belzak, I think I see Steve on here. I got a S Belzak. We'll circle back. Hoyt Jeter, Sean Carlstrom, not in the room. And Todd Sullivan, not seeing in here. William Mybush, not seeing in here. Brian Horseman, not seeing in here. Joshua Mergens,
Here.
thank you. Trent Tinney, not seen in the room. Michael Shaw, not seeing in here. Brett Conway, don't see in the attendees. Michael Barth, not seeing. Leah Summer, don't see in there. Paul Clark,
Here.
Andy Leonto.
Here.
All right, circling back to Steve Belzak, are you in the room with us? I see a name, but we're not getting affirmative. Even if he was responding, we'd be shy of quorum right now.
Okay. Well, we'll get started. The intent today is to make progress as we decided last meeting. So we won't take any further action on obviously agenda. So we'll just jump right in, kind of an update, and the intent is organized, give this team a little update on what the council decided last couple weeks ago on our schedule. So Dustin, is that a good handoff?
Sure. If we're gonna jump right into it, and I guess before we run into that, do we want to let members of the public introduce?
Sure, we absolutely can. Anyone would like to be recognized, please raise your hand. Okay, let's go with Elizabeth first.
Yeah, Elizabeth Torsky with Cascade Natural Gas. Thank you.
Welcome. Patrick. Oh,
Patrick, I saw you unmute, but we didn't hear anything from you.
okay. Well, we'll mark it down. Patrick's here.
Yes, Patrick, thank you for joining us today.
All right, go ahead.
So
I'm sorry, Dustin, this is Steve Belzak. I'm on board now. I was able to hear you, but you couldn't hear me. So hopefully all's good now.
all right, I definitely hear you. Thank you for
Perfect. You're welcome.
All right.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Sorry. Technical difficulties.
It's one of those days, it sounds like. Alrighty. So official quorum count, we are sitting at 6 and lacking 2 seats for quorum. So if I'll try to keep an eye on folks coming in as we're talking today, and if we do establish, well, I'll bring that to the attention of the chair. So I guess an update on the schedule for 2024 codes in general as a result of our last council meeting. The council passed a motion to do final adoption of the 2024 codes in May of 2026. They also included as a secondary motion, passed a motion to continue to explore options for maintaining our November 1 implementation date in 2026. And that would require some legislative action in the 2026 session to allow for that. Otherwise, the statute would require that a code adoption that happens after or during the legislative session of 2026 would need to sit through a session, and the earliest date we're looking for, if that is the tack, is to be May 1 of 2027. But right now, the advertised implementation date is November 1, barring some changes in the near future. So what that means for the work before this group, this group met diligently is part of the Group 1 codes to do the main body of the rulemaking for the 2024 codes. And we have some legislative items that got pushed back till now to have as part of this code making for the 2024 cycle. We have temporary emergency shelters, which is brought to us by Senate Bill 5553. And you can find that resulting RCW language in RCW 1927.042 number 3. And then we also have the dwelling unit size work that we need to do, and that's to bring the dwelling unit size down from where it currently stands in the building code, and that's brought to us by House Bill 2071. And the RCW is now 19.27.801. The goal for this group is to have the work done in time to include in publications for the 2024 code. So with the change at the council for the main body of the 2024 codes, that puts that back into alignment with where we want this work to fall, which is wrapping up right around May to do the final adoption on these two provisions and include in the draft work for publications so that can be ready by November 1. I'm thinking that we're trying to target September, but it really depends on where we're at as we cross the finish line in May on how that publication process will work out. And I'm confident we can get them out by the implementation date, but that's not my ideal solution at the moment.
Okay. So I think to restate what you just said, we're on the same path technically of schedule that we wanted to be. Maybe you didn't mention, Dustin, we think this probably aligns the same schedule as the single exit. Is
Yes.
that correct? Doesn't have to, but it makes sense that those mandated ones line up with that.
Correct. And in the updated schedule online now, that is exactly what's shown for this group is a parallel path with the single exit stuff.
Okay. And then remind me, I don't remember what we decided or if we talked about it on how we wanted to approach this. Did we want to do both at every meeting? Did we want to stagger them? Did we want to go linear and do one first and then pick up the second one?
I don't think that we set a definite track for that, but I will express that. Well, I mean, I guess the single exit multiplex housing tag tends to be a little bit confusing because we have the two different topics, but they are kind of related in subject matter. These, I think, are separated a little bit more so that we can address them either together. But I think that what I would prefer, and it seems to work better for the single exit multiplex housing tag, is to have these on alternating cadences. So we have a meeting for temporary emergency shelters, a meeting for dwelling unit size until one or the other wraps, and then we can have consistent meetings on one.
But get started on both so we can start.
Yeah, so today's meeting was intended to be a longer meeting where we're kind of identifying more topics that we want to make sure that we are addressing as we develop these provisions. And then so as we move forward into the future meetings, we're looking at having shorter meetings instead of a 3-hour meeting. We're looking at 1, maybe 2 hours, depending on the need of the group at that point.
That's right. Okay. Okay, I guess we'll ask, does anyone have any thoughts just based off what we talked about so far today? Somebody, Micah, go ahead, please.
Thanks. I guess unfortunately I wasn't aware of all this because I haven't gotten enough notifications. Is there going to be a formal announcement on the opening of requests for proposals for each part of this legislation, or is that just folks in the know have to do it and make it happen, because it doesn't seem like there's any formal news or announcements or anything else?
The answer is yes, Micah. No, yes to both. I think we need to establish that is where we are right now. So if we're just like level setting where we are, what do we need to do? What's the best approach? Is the best approach open a window? Does that need council action, or is this, tag directed to just start developing some language, figure it out, and then making recommendations if we need more outside help. So if you have thoughts on what you'd like to see, please weigh in.
So I'd like to opine just a little bit on that one. We've got the technical advisory group convened here, and since this is, legislative work directed for the council to conduct, we've taken the approach that, yes, public proposals are great to receive and move in with, but that we don't necessarily need to absolutely have that. But I welcome that part of this process. If we want to open up a window for public proposals, it sounds good to me. But I think we also have the liberty to, maybe set a baseline document and move forward from there as well.
Yeah, and Micah, go ahead, because I think the question that's being asked here is these tags were formed for a certain purpose, obviously to review external petitions. This is now taking the tag and obviously doing additional tasks here. So whatever is most comfortable by the tag is we should guide that. So go ahead, Micah.
I can appreciate that, Todd, and I can appreciate the direction you took, Dustin, saying this is legislatively driven. But I think that a notification, or at least some type of, hey, this is happening notification out to at least to the folks that are on we get the subscription to get the emails for meeting notifications and stuff. Just for the simple fact that I think a lot of stakeholders, especially in the temporary emergency shelters, could be valuable. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I didn't know that one was even coming up until I looked at the agenda yesterday. So for this meeting. So I think that's an important one. I mean, Seattle does a ton of emergency shelter stuff. And so to not even know that this is going to be open for petitions or helping create something there, again, that's all. If I need to send out notifications, I'll do that. But if you're going to meet on a regular cadence, that's helpful as well. Because I know we have definitely some input on temporary shelters and the dwelling unit size item, especially since folks are interested in our small efficiency dwelling unit code language. It may be helpful in the dwelling unit size discussion, but I will be involved, and thanks for the input.
Thank you, Micah. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, I'll kind of ask, but I also kind of know the answer to the question. It looks like you haven't submitted, or at least there hasn't been published a CR 101 for these two items. I know there's the general 2024 code updates for the model codes, but I think it would make sense that those would probably have a separate filing. And so I think that would probably help to let some stakeholders know that this is going on. But it's not a requirement, but I've started monitoring the L&I electrical code rulemaking updates, and L&I is pretty good about filing CR 101s really early, and then they'll have a stakeholder information page for each of their rulemaking filings that just kind of has a succinct one-stop shop where you can see all the filings, and they explain what's going on, what they're going to be doing, and have a rough timeline of here's how you can participate, here's when the future meetings or dates are going to occur. So something like that may help for those that want to be involved in this and not currently aware that it's going on, and so they can know how to participate. I don't have any strong feelings as to opening a public proposal process or not. I think with some of these legislative required ones, receiving public proposals is great, but also at the end of the day, right, if you don't get any proposals, or you don't get proposals that do what you need to do, the council via the tag still need to come up with some sort of recommendation. So yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Patrick. I think we're all touching on where we are in the process here. Is we're trying to establish the public process we want and what the best approach is, since this is outside of the 3-year external petition process. So okay, Hoyt.
Yeah, I
Go
just
ahead.
wanted to apologize. I was late. I was having some problems hooking up. So lovely technology. So apologize on that.
All right, welcome, Hoyt.
We're shy of one seat still.
Okay, so we're not ready to take action anyway. So okay, this is a lot of inside baseball, but important to establish that this is what we're talking about here: the rulemaking process and how we want to go forward. So does anyone have any questions on what we're talking about here about filing CR 101s and so forth? We're just trying to begin the process. We're trying to establish what the public process is, which stakeholders need to be involved, and what the best way to move forward is. Anyone have any other comments or questions?
I have just the comment that I did try to start a topic summary page for this based on the notes and comments we had at the last meeting. And so I can share that on screen now. It's available
Yeah,
in the meeting
let's talk a
document.
little bit about that, just to make sure everybody knows where to go.
And I do on the IBC tag page have also some temporary emergency shelter and dwelling unit size sublinks, but I don't have the content there yet. So after today's meeting, if these documents are what we're running with, I will be posting those on the IBC tag page, which is under meeting schedules and agendas on the main tab.
I see Ardell.
Hey. Just found out about this from my colleague Micah about an hour ago, so appreciate having me on. For both of these, if the tag can please come up with a schedule, that would be more than very much appreciated on what meetings will cover which topic. I'm already getting mixed up on the alternating ones for single exit and multiplex. For this one, on the one thing that we that would be great, and I don't know if this is setting a different precedence, Todd, would be can we have the legislator come and talk about their intent? Because when I'm looking at temporary emergency shelters, and again, I apologize as I'm looking at this cold, what comes to mind is just the number of different types of shelters that we have. Like, this is about within an existing building, and the 5-year break, which is very much one type of shelter, right? There's durations around emergency shelters. Am I coming in? Am I staying that same occupancy? And at night, I'm opening up as a church for another shelter. There's also types of shelters where I'm a day use shelter during the day, which most jurisdictions treat as an office occupancy, maybe an assembly, and then they might have sleeping at night. So there's also other variations that many jurisdictions are seeing around tiny homes, encampments, so there's such a vast array of types of emergency shelter and relief that gets requested to building officials around indigent housing, that if we can start this with the legislative intent and understand that out of the gate, I think that's where we've kind of had some missteps on the other legislative driven code changes.
Yeah, no, I think that's really valuable insight, especially since you're so involved with another process. So what should we do differently this time? Or maybe these are such different topics that we don't need to recreate any of that process. And then to your point, I agree. We try to hold this meeting just to keep going, so that we didn't just wait a couple months and then try to make up the process. But secondly, as we know, we're all coming into session. There are a lot of other active ideas out there that legislators want to talk about during session. And I think if this is our first opportunity to bring subject matter experts together and unpack what is being asked here, it also is good timing for us to collaborate with the legislature to get that intent. In fact, next week, the council has been asked to join the local governments committee and workshop multiple ideas. And if we need to bring something forward even right now on this and just ask some clarification or some help, that would be perfect timing. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay, with that, so now what next? So do we have ideas? Do we want to, so Dustin, explain to everyone again, when you bring this topic summary up, this is similar to what you're kind of doing on the single exit and multiplex, right? That's one process that's being taken to start to list all the topics out and then be able to have some
Be able to
structure. behind
schedule,
discussing.
organize them, and separate them out. So, the main difference between what's going on there and what's going on here is I don't have proposals to point, or like a baseline document already to start pointing to. We're not running with the Wabo proposal and then modifying it and so on. So, but for the most part, the rest of this table remains the same. I wanted to, I guess, maybe offer, what I have here is the topics that I heard comments on at our last meeting and made notes on. And so as we move forward, we could start small, and as we explore what's on the page now, there may be more topics that arise as questions, and we can add to the list. And that's been a, tradition that's been going on at the single exit multiplex housing tag. And so it's a short list now, but I hope that it grows. And then out of what comes from that, we will have the seeds for, the language. And if we can identify most of the topics, and maybe, as the first one on line 1 says, maybe start with the tiny home appendix as a starting point. Maybe that could be the baseline document, and we start modifying from there. But I would be open to suggestions for how we develop this language.
Okay, note on that also, there's tiny home standard being developed right now too. Go ahead, Hoyt.
Yeah, the one thing in this chart that would be really nice, that I always like, is when revisions are starting to get made. So you have in here like date scheduled, date discussed, topic, tiny home appendix use is base language, where requirements located, HTML comments. It'd be nice to have a little chart of how many revisions have gone through. One of the things is over time, a lot of times you download it or you do something like that to see where we're at the revisions stage, especially working on some of these that I've sat on and some helping, is we kind of keep a running track of revisions as we're going, like in Word, when you're doing Word, it'd be nice to have that in your table that you're putting here.
I think I can do that. I mean, as I'm thinking about that, I think a separate table maybe up at the top just to have revision tracks, and so you can see the different versions of the document as it goes through. And what I've done in the single exit group is in the comments put in, dates for when things are resolved, and dates when things are discussed as well. And so in a revision tracker, I could have those type of data points available so that you can go to the specific revision and see that type of stuff. But as I put something in there, I'd be open to suggestions for improvements.
Okay, and I have questions where this belongs in the code, but Ardell, why don't you go first, please?
Is there 2 questions? First is there capacity, Dustin, or from the SBCC for a staff to survey jurisdictions and find who already has policies in place around emergency shelter relief? I know we have a policy, City of Shoreline has it, I believe, adopted into their code. Boy, you can verify it for me, but Tacoma, I believe, has policy.
Yeah,
around
we
this.
do. Yeah, we do too.
And so
there's limited capacity to, reach out and, I don't have a full list right at my disposal of all the contacts out there, but I'd be happy to try to get some notification out there to see if there's jurisdictions that would be willing to step forward and
I mean, I think you could send a singular request to Tara Jenkins at Wabo and ask her, and that she can then share out to jurisdictions who are interested as far as the stakeholder group, for contributing whatever they can to the discussion. That's one suggestion. And then the second is if I'm looking at existing buildings and the temporary shelters are really looking for relief, right? And so Dustin's, I think, started to, it's like, well, what's temporary? What's emergency? What's a shelter? But also, what's the relief? And primarily, if I'm putting a sleeping occupancy into a building that's not already required or not already designed as a shelter, I'm looking at what would have been the residential occupancy requirements for a change of occupancy and what's the relief. And so really you're looking at sprinklers and fire alarm. So what is absent in an office that's now being converted to a shelter is sprinklers, right? And so what are you offering in exchange for that is really what's the discussion. So when we're looking at relief, what is the mitigation? So just some thoughts as you try to frame this. It's what does a residential occupancy already require, and where can you provide relief because it's an emergency shelter?
I think it raises the question, we might have to backtrack a little bit and make sure everyone's on the same page of the definition of emergency shelter and review the statute again, just to make sure we all understand the problem. Go ahead, Joshua, though. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I was gonna ask the questions you're basically alluding to. My impression from our last meeting was this was like for disaster relief, a flood or something hits, and there's these companies that have these sort of pop-up shelters that would be very temporary in use. But hearing Ardell talk, I'm thinking of it in a very different way. So really, I was going to ask exactly what you were alluding to. Is just we really need to know what these structures are. I'm still unclear with what we're putting forth language for.
Okay, is that what we want to maybe do here? And if let's finish off the conversation on this structure and maybe the dwelling unit size too. But Hoyt, do you want to weigh in here for?
So some of the stuff we have for emergency, so just to add on to that, like when it gets a certain temperature here, cold wise, emergency shelters are opened up for homeless people in Tacoma and things like that to go to. I think that's what some people are talking about. We have emergencies after a shelter, then we also have emergency shelters for when the temperature gets to a certain degree in Tacoma. We open up some areas to keep people inside if they can. So.
Okay, I think we better, if everyone's okay with that, maybe we should dive a little deeper on this topic, unless there are other more general questions about this approach. It sounds like if we're okay with this structure, it'll evolve a little bit over time, but we're going to start talking about topics, seek that information multiple ways, both in these meetings, through email, reaching out, so forth. Okay, so is that everyone okay if we jump a little deeper into this emergency shelter topic first and try to understand the intent on our own and then the definition of what we're trying to address here?
So I have pulled up here the bill, the session law.
Hey, can you go back up? Just sorry to interrupt you already, but can you go back up to who the sponsors were, just so we familiarize
yeah, I took a note to invite the primes. I got Lovelit is the prime on temporary emergency shelters, and then for the dwelling unit size is Rep Doer.
Okay, and this one was 2023, and same with.
I believe it's 24.
Oh, this was 27. Yeah, this was last year. Okay.
We just have a new little section added in, and there's not a lot of meat there, but one of the things I like to look at is in the it's just sometimes this statement up here on line 1 and 2 sometimes has a little bit more meat in there for maybe giving some context to the legislation, but there's not a lot there.
Dustin, can you maybe pull us into RCW 1927-042 and just kind of help us with context of where this exists in statute?
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of there, but I think just looking at the actual. Okay. Okay, so I think coming back to Ardell and Hoyt's comments, do most on this call feel these are larger structures where you're occupying a large shelter, or is there also interpretation in here that we have to bring in rules for standalone, temporary shelters, tents, whatever they might be. Is that the question some people have? Go ahead, Josh.
I would say, yeah, that's the question I have, and maybe we could sum it up to, is this for, primarily on home situations? Is this primarily for disaster relief, or is this to encompass both of those? I think those are quite a bit different situations that require quite a bit different approach. And I'm digging through everything, and I'm searching online right now, and I cannot find anything except the words temporary emergency shelters. So I think the context is just the most important. Is this encompassing of any emergency that could happen, or is this specifically targeted for challenges cities have had with putting temporary shelters for unhomed people, and that's what we're driving after, or is it all of it?
Yeah, because on one end, at Ardell's point, it's taking over an existing structure, a large office or retail or whatever it might be, and adapting that. And the other end, it's allowing for temporary type shelter. Go ahead, Hoyt.
Yeah, I thought when I first got this brought up to my attention, I read it at first as anything. So it could be an existing building that's a temporary emergency shelter. It could be standalone tents. It could be, I don't think that's not clear. So the way I understand it, it was anything. Emergency shelter, temporary, could be a school building. They turn into emergency shelter for a certain amount of time. So that's
Okay.
how I've interpreted.
Thank you, Ardell.
Yeah, agreed. I've interpreted this section, and this section has been in place since 91. The add is item 3 that asks the SBCC to provide language that a local jurisdiction can adopt, right? So again, this has been on the books for quite some time, and it gives the local official the ability to provide relief to code requirements for the purpose of providing temporary emergency shelter. And so that's the question: is the temporary around the emergency shelter existing, or is it about the people who are unhoused that need temporary shelter? And so I've always read it as what you've described, which is that it encompasses all of it, because there is a population that needs temporary shelter, not that the shelter itself, so that's for an ongoing use. So it covers both the extreme weather, it covers the shelter that is housing somebody who needs temporary housing, and it also covers, again, under the extreme weather, like temporary shelters that are new structures that are, portable structures or whatever. We had those during, I think a couple during COVID, that are housing people who need short duration shelter and meet the temporary needs. So I've used it sort of like as a carte blanche across all of those conditions.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's a lot of scope, because as you reread 1 and 2 here, they seem to apply very specifically to buildings that have a change of use or occupancy in order to accommodate this. 3 is less clear that it's referencing 1. It seems a little more broad.
Right.
So does it include change of use in 1, is what I'm hearing, and it includes other types of new portable temporary structures? Okay.
Well, I know
That's
that
why I was
when this
asking, get the legislator to.
You asked the right question. Thank you.
when this was going through legislative session, the pallet shelter company made contact and was interested. I tried to get them online for this meeting, but my contacts have changed over there, so I'm waiting on some communication back from them. But it sounds like they were interested in this being able to be used for more mobile type structures that aren't on permanent foundations and things like that might pop up in emergent times.
Okay. And just one more point here, and then I'll go to Josh. That for local adoption is important. So is that everyone's assumption? We're treating this again like an appendix type thing that can be adopted very cleanly rather than integrating it into existing sections?
That's kind of my view on it. I was thinking that we don't necessarily adopt it across the state, but make it like adoptable by just notifying the SBCC instead of getting a full, you know, hey, we're going to adopt this. And what do you guys think about it in our jurisdiction type thing?
Okay, and then what is there a distinction between standards? Because it doesn't specifically call out a code. Okay. Okay, let's start with Josh. You've been hanging out.
So, you know, looking at some of the examples we're talking about, if it's a building that's being converted for use for temporary housing for people, but it's going to stay in place and be continued to be used for that, or like a transitional housing establishment, wouldn't that fall under just the regular adopted building codes that we already have? Or is there a gap that I'm unaware of that would prevent that? I mean, we certainly have transient housing requirements in the building code already, which is why, to me, this didn't strike me as a temporary housing, but the structure itself were to be temporary, because otherwise, if it's just temporary housing, I believe we're covered on code on that, but I'm interested to hear from people who are more experienced in.
Thanks, Josh. Jay.
Yes, thank you, Todd, and thank you, Ardell, for the background. That's really helpful. But my concern is the same. It says here that under number 3, that the State Building Code Council shall adapt by rule standards for temporary emergency shelters. What are those standards? I think we need to be more specific on if there is a section of the code that states what those standards are. What is the jurisdiction really adopting?
Yep, good question. That's the question I have. Are we creating something new? Are we creating a standard? Standard could be a appendix in the code, or it could be a standalone standard. Because going back to the number 1, what is really needed, we're not really creating a standard in order to create relief, in Ardell's, you know, words, to exempt certain requirements. But I'd love to hear more about that.
You want me to answer some of that?
Go ahead, Ardell, please. Yeah.
Sorry. And I think that I welcome other jurisdictions to come in a future meeting and talk about how they're addressing the asks, right? So going back to, again, there's various versions of this where we've used this language to offer relief on a code change proposal. So Dustin brought up the example of pallet shelters. Pallet shelters are LNI compliant, or reviewed and constructed offsite and brought to a location. LNI does that review and approval, but they often are asking for relief on energy code and foundations. So there's various approaches to this across the state on how each jurisdiction is reviewing and approving those, and on how they're being used, right? So you have the pallet shelters themselves, but pallet shelter also creates or also produces common use structures. So bathroom buildings, assembly buildings, and how do you regulate those? The other end that was brought up as the example was an ongoing use as a temporary emergency shelter. That It's this duration. So going back to, well, what makes it temporary? What makes it emergency? So I think it is important to define those things. If it's an ongoing use, if I'm a day use shelter, it's a B occupancy. They come in and they say, well, this winter I want to open it for sleeping at night. So they're not looking for the change of occupancy to make it a residential shelter as a 24-hour care. So that's a part-time use as a residential sleeping, right? So there's so many variations of this, and I really do encourage getting stakeholders in. The solutions that we have right now are shifting as approaches to giving options for the unhoused in your jurisdiction are also changing. So it really needs to have providers come in and say, here's where we want to put emergency shelters and where we're coming up against regulation.
Okay. Makes a lot of sense. So maybe that's our first task, is listening, obviously, and we need to invite those subject matter experts and stakeholders into what they want to do, and the cities, obviously, and what they're experiencing. Okay, thank you, Ardell. Paul?
Yeah, I would double on what Ardell has said. So we, I think what it's asking is that what's the minimum standard for an emergency shelter, and is it sleeping? Are there bathing facilities that are in each unit, which kind of goes back to the proposals for the minimum dwelling unit size. There are a lot of different options that we could look at that, maybe each sleeping room doesn't have its own bathroom and bathing unit and food facilities. So, I think that's what we've been asked to look at, is what's the minimum standard for the structure itself, and the size, and from that perspective, just to give people a little bit of guidance in other jurisdictions.
And I'll ask the question and then go to Hoyt. What problem is this solving? So, right now local jurisdictions could adopt already, and they seems like they are. Is this trying to bring some sort of common approach that we're using statewide rulemaking to propose something that could be adopted outright by local jurisdictions? Is it addressing the challenge of, if this is housing, therefore, even if a local jurisdiction were to propose something, it has to still come to the State Building Code Council for review of that if it's related to housing? I don't know if that's what's happening or not, but I just want to raise those questions. And go ahead, Hoyt.
Yeah, just to let, I did some research on it a little bit, and the UN, United Nations, for around the country, has a thing about emergency shelter solutions and standards. It's kind of a handbook that kind of explains a lot of this stuff. And some of the stuff at Tacoma, I've used some of that to kind of make some decisions when we had to do for, homeless people and stuff like that, for tent camps and where we had to have temporary housing for them, and those kind of things. So I just wanted to bring that up so you just know there is standards and stuff out there for being able to do that. And it's just being able to implement them. And then that's kind of what we use, is kind of what the UN had for that stuff. And it's actually titled, it's an emergency handbook, but it says Emergency Shelter Solution and Standards, if anyone wanted to Google it. So.
Okay, thank you, Hoyt. Okay, next steps. Again, we don't need to spend all 3 hours today, so let's kind of be direct here. It sounds to me like we have a series of questions and for the legislature to get intent first. But it sounds like we're also forming a list of stakeholders and subject matter experts we may want to hear from here to weigh in that's not represented in our current TAG makeup. Does that sound correct? Do we want to spend about 5 minutes just talking about that? The council's happy to then hand off and raise these questions next week in Olympia.
I realistically, I don't know how productive of a conversation we can have without some of that information from here.
I
It
agree.
seems kind of lacking scope. And until we have a defined scope, I'm not sure how we make productive use of that time. I mean, we have some ideas, we have interpretations, but without narrowing that down, I mean, we could spend a lot of time deciding what constitutes temporary in our opinion to find out that the definition is entirely different.
Yep.
From the legislative intent.
Thank you, Josh. Wait. Is your hand still up? Okay, interrupt me if you're trying to speak, but you're muted. Okay, I agree, Josh. So, anyone, I think we're capturing this. Dustin, do you feel comfortable we're capturing this so that we can
I do. I
reach out?
got lots of things to run with on this one. But prime is first reaching out to the legislatures and inviting them to maybe explain a little bit further to the group, doing this work, exactly what they had in mind when they passed this legislation.
Okay.
So I'll reach out to Rep. Doer and Rep. Lovett, and maybe next week when we're at the House Local Government Committee, we can talk a little bit about that as well. Going to reach out to Tara at Wabo for trying to get some jurisdictional guidance on what they may already have on the books. And then, trying to identify some stakeholders beyond some of those folks there. I know Pallet Shelters is interested, but if there's other folks doing a Gov delivery notice will help get some other folks out there as well. But we'll try to beat the bushes on that one.
Okay. And Ardell, you were going to weigh in there?
Yeah, I was just going back to the original bill. There is a final bill report under SB 5553 that does give a little more insight on the background. And it's pretty broad. On the background, it's like temporary tent or building encampments provide shelter. Religious organizations may host organizations and provide shelter. Local governments may need to provide relief. Like, it's pretty broad. So yeah, getting that intent would be really helpful.
And I think a couple of us will go back and we'll go rewatch some of the committee meetings and try to capture that better. But yeah, thank you for pointing this out. I would pull from this that it's at least this. We have to address temporary portable type structures. So I think my question still is it inclusive of large existing buildings that want to house X number of people? Is more of a use relief. Okay, anything else we haven't talked about that anyone would like to raise to this?
Do we want to look at the dwelling unit size statute and I mean, we want to invite the legislatures anyway, but do we want to maybe try to suss out the question we might have there, or what might we...
On this one or on the next one?
On the next one.
On the next one, yeah, I do feel we need to.
Okay.
I maybe would raise the question to everyone here, given what we talked about, what size is everyone thinking? And I ask that because there's, in addition, then the kit homes bill, which is meant to be more permanent structures, in my opinion. But that's kind of the next step up of 800 square feet, which is big, in my opinion, and smaller. So we're trying to put everything in a spectrum here of what the legislature might be asking us to do. But if not, that's fine. Well, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, so I was, kind of what I was mentioning on the emergency shelters is that, the size of the dwelling unit would need to be defined by whether it's a, sleeping room or sleeping unit, and whether it has bathing facilities and whether it has cooking facilities, because you could have a sleeping unit only and then have bathing units and cooking units separate. And so I think that, maybe there's a way we define a standard for, what the minimum size is for a sleeping unit, and include minimum size for, or a quantity, a ratio of bathing units within, like a, encampment or something, or, building, I guess. So there, that, I think what I saw on, the size of the structures, it may vary, I guess, if someone is trying to do something different than the standard, I suppose.
Yeah. And I think that's an important question that we're starting to see some of these providers. I've watched these presentations where they're bringing in bathing or kitchen, so it's starting to sound more like a dwelling unit, right? And that brings in a lot of other considerations. So, okay, good comment, Paul. Thank you. Okay, anything else on this? Let's then move to the second item, which is the dwelling size. Maybe do the same thing, Dustin. We'll maybe
Yeah.
pull that bill up and refamiliarize everyone with it.
There's that. I have also the bill pulled up here. This is by Representative Dewar, Bateman, Fitzgibbon, Berry. We have a kind of statement of intent here in number 1. And while we're showing that, I will find the bill report for this real quick.
So while we're looking at this, we're looking at the section that obviously deals with the multiplex, but it's in the same bill is what we're saying.
Oh, yes. I'm sorry, I was in the wrong section.
That's okay. I mean, that's actually good context for everyone is to remember that this was all one bill. And then in this one, it does say the International Building Code specifically. So is everyone also interpreting this that we're amending the actual code? This is not a appendix in my understanding. And this is not for local adoption. This is a
It'll be statewide adoption.
amendment. Yep. Okay. Any questions before we move on from the actual language?
Yeah, I have
Uh,
one
Steve, go ahead.
question real quick. Oh,
Okay,
I'm
go ahead,
sorry.
Hoyt first. Yep.
Okay. Yeah, real quick on this. The one thing he says is actually building code, which I agree, but the state also can adopt an appendix to a building code and make it state adopted too. So I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong, Dustin, that you could make this as an appendix to the International Building Code and make it state required, rather than actually going through and starting to modify the building code specifically. That's the way I understand it, but I could be wrong on that. So.
Well, we do have current modifications to the dwelling unit size sections in the code. And where's my comments on here? My PDF. So yeah, this stuff that's highlighted here in pink is
yeah, that's efficiency. There was not efficiency units.
And as we're doing this, I think the answer to your question, Hoyt, is yes, we could do that and make it mandatory.
Yes.
That's the best fit, yeah.
I mean, this isn't in, I mean, we have efficiency dwelling units. This is part of the state amendment, but we do modify, but this is the same as the 2024 language, what our modification was in 2021. So there's really not much going on within 190 square feet there, but I believe we're looking at reducing these numbers here in these sections.
Okay. Steve, you lowered your hand?
Yeah, so I was just reading the section 2 where it says it seems like the intent of the of the legislature is to align our code with the National Healthy Housing Standard. I don't know exactly how critical that is. Is that, I mean, we could just adopt the National Healthy Housing Standard, I suppose, to meet their intent, or is there some latitude here? I think there is. I think that's why we're discussing it, but just a thought I had.
And we do have a proposal we received through the process of when the code proposal windows were open. We have one from David Neiman. He's not here. I did let him know we were having the meeting today. But we have the proposal there. I don't remember exactly what he's got proposed for changes there, but he also included in his proposal the National Healthy Housing Standard as a document that we can view. And he included also some cost analysis on dwelling unit size and how it impacts the availability and rent. I believe he's using Seattle as the location for those rents.
Okay, thank you, Justin.
Okay, Micah?
Thanks. Yeah, I've read the healthy housing standard stuff, and it does not specify dwelling unit sizes. It only specifies habitable room sizes of 70 square feet. Technically, we already align with that with the 7 foot. Well, there's stuff in the code that already aligns with that 70 square foot size for habitable spaces. So I think we do have to look if the legislation talks about dwelling unit size as a whole, then I think we need to look beyond the habitable room size. Because the efficiency unit that the legislation mentions as well is beyond the 70 square foot size. So we already, in my opinion, habitable spaces already align with the 70 square feet outside of the required 120 square feet for one of those spaces in a dwelling, and then the other spaces would be 70 square feet. Maybe you aren't aware, maybe you all are aware, the IRC tag did adopt a code change that only required one habitable room in single families to be 120 square feet, and then no other rooms would have a minimum size requirement. So I think we need to find a balance, but again, I believe we already align with that 70 square foot space in the building code currently, at least for the habitable room requirement. I know we got a lot more to talk about on this and other proposals, but that should come in. But I think we need to look at the dwelling unit size as a whole and not just the habitable space one. Thanks.
Micah, this is Steve here. I agree with what you're saying. I think the only difference between our code now would be there's a section 304 deals with furred ceilings, which I don't think is in the National Healthy Housing Standard, but you know, it's something to think about. That's all I have. Thanks.
So while there's still some unpacking of the intent here, is this one a little more straightforward that someone could propose some code to start looking at, some code amendments to start looking at? And Mike, I don't know the reference you in the IRC, the language, but I mean, is there any basis there that helps us, or is it somebody needs to just know these sections in the IBC and go forward?
I don't know if the one in the IRC would help. Again, the IRC already allowed previously for 70 square feet, but every habitable room had to meet that 70 square feet. The intention of that change was to say only one room needed to meet 120 square feet, and then the other habitable rooms in a single family, one or two family dwelling was irrelevant on site, not necessarily irrelevant, but did not have to meet that 70 square feet any longer. So this is completely separate. I was just throwing that out there for reference on sizing, and where in the building code the 70 square feet came up. But yeah, we can bring up code language, and then I think Dustin mentioned Mr. Neiman had put in something already if we wanted to bring that up.
Okay, Dustin, is the proposed amendment, does that have the actual section, the interior sections that's referenced here that you just had up?
I'm popping it open right now. Yes.
Okay. Okay, can you go back and maybe slow down on that just for a second there, and especially this part? So we saw the 70 referenced in there. So without knowing the healthy, I mean, is that what this is doing? Is starting to bring some of that language in to align?
I believe so. So,
I think scroll up more for the, there you go.
and then he's also got the healthy housing standard. These are all posted for today's meeting as well. So 65-page document. I don't know, is there any specifics? I haven't had a chance to go through this. But is there any specific section that we could look to for what we've got going on here?
Yeah, it's in the table of contents. Scroll down. I think it's right there, section 2, minimum space. Looks like page 8.
So Micah, if I'm understanding you correctly, the IRC, what they were aligning with the 120 already in the building code for one room, but this amendment goes further. This would say 70.
Yeah, the previous size for every habitable room in the IRC was 70 square feet. But again, that was for every habitable room. The current proposal goes to 120 for one habitable room that would align with the building code. If you look at the current language of the building code for 1208.4, in the base model code says every dwelling unit shall have not less than one room that has less than 120 square feet, and then other habitable rooms of a dwelling unit shall have 70 square feet.
Right.
So the understanding or the intent of the current code language that we have in the state, which Dustin had up a moment ago, if Dustin wants to bring that back up, is that in a dwelling unit, you're going to have more than one room. If you only had one room, then it would be considered an efficiency dwelling unit. So Dustin, if you'll scroll up to the 1208.4, as you see here, dwelling unit, that's the intent of the 190. So dwelling unit shall have a minimum of 190, which would be the 120. If you see it below room area, the 120 plus the 70. You know, again, that's kind of the interpretation, is that a dwelling unit would have two rooms, not one room. It would be an efficiency dwelling unit if it only had one room. And that efficiency dwelling unit had the 190. So we wanted to align those two numbers. And that's where the current code change or current code language comes from. So you've got 170 in one room and 70 in another room. That would make a dwelling unit. 190 in one room would make the efficiency dwelling unit by definition. So,
and in definition, the IRC or also the IBC? I just don't know.
That would be in the IBC, and I'd have to look at the IRC real fast.
Okay.
Off the top of my head for definitions.
That is defined in section 2, you're saying?
Dwelling unit is defined, yes.
Okay.
Efficiency dwelling unit is, if it's not defined at the national level, it's defined at the state for sure.
Okay. Okay, so it's just questions we have to, or topics we have to all get familiar with. Oh, okay, Ardell, please.
Suggestion for topics is to include accessibility. So as you go smaller, the ability to meet minimum clearance requirements can be difficult if you allow
This would be on dwelling unit. Sorry, Ardell.
Like efficiency dwelling units has a number under 12085 item 3 that says for other than accessible type A and type B dwelling units, like this is what's required, right? And so as you allow it to go smaller, I think there needs to be a conscious decision and understanding of what the impact is on accessible units. It's a little too in the weeds to talk about in your overview meeting, though, I think.
Well, appreciate that for flagging it. Okay, on that note, what else do we want to accomplish here? Do we want to flag more items? Like the first one, are there any questions in legislative intent, or is this one more straightforward that we are more focused on topics and bringing in subject matter experts if needed?
Can I add one more section and provision to look at?
Please.
We're talking about minimum room area, minimum size, but even in like David Neiman's proposal, it's leaving out some other sections in 1208 that I think should also be, again, discussed as part of this. And that's the minimum room widths, and I think somebody wrote it earlier, the minimum ceiling heights. So when we're talking about a 70 square foot minimum, what is the dimensional requirements of that? 1208.1 says habitable spaces other than a kitchen shall be not less than 7 feet. So when we go to a kitchen in an efficiency dwelling unit, what are the minimum dimensions? And that would say less than 3 feet, right? So there's a lot of dimensional impacts on how you're measuring the 70 and the 120 or the 190, that it would be great to have that and have that be understood.
Can anyone more broadly just talk about what we're trying to solve, and when was this put into the code? That what are we trying to reform, if anything?
Trying to
Or
let units get smaller.
for sure, you know, is this a case where historically they were allowed and at some point code was amended to not allow these? Or is it, I mean, too historical about it?
Todd, Steve here. I know the original intent behind all these provisions were to deal with the tenement housing in the East Coast, you know, where people were being basically housed in slum type conditions, and it was unhealthy at some point, determined to be unhealthy. And so the state government stepped in, and then it became pretty much a national standard later. I don't know if we don't really deal with those kind of conditions in our area of the country, so I'm not sure how appropriate it is, but it still remains in the code. So just a little background there.
No, that's what I was looking for, and appreciate that. Thank you. Wait.
Yeah, I was just gonna add on there. Yeah, I did come back to, like, I believe it was in the Boca or something like that, in New York or things like that, where they started where they wanted to make exactly that thing, have a minimum size so people wouldn't be squeezed into a smaller area. So I'm just adding on that. I believe that's where it started from, when we had the 3 model codes a long time ago.
Okay, appreciate that. And I guess I was kind of asking also just to understand the history. Was this in the category of exclusionary type code changes, or simply this is just where we've evolved over health and, you know, life safety, and we need to be careful how we amend here? Well, I mean, that's a given. We have to be careful. Okay. Micah, do you have your hand up? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to throw out that at the national level for the, I can't remember if it's the 2021 or 2024 codes, we did work to kind of align the requirements of the efficiency dwelling unit with the dwelling unit sizes. If you're not aware, previously, the minimum efficiency dwelling unit size, I believe, was 220 square feet, something like that, which you could actually build a dwelling unit smaller than the efficiency dwelling unit. So you were being penalized for putting it all in one room, in one space. And I know that maybe came down to how folks were counting that habitable space, and were they including counters, were they including closets, things like that? Maybe they weren't. But the efficiency dwelling unit in the last, at least within the last 2 code cycles, got smaller. And so there was an alignment there, just for some historical purposes on efficiency dwelling units, since this is part of the topic, is making it smaller than an efficiency dwelling unit. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, interesting topic. Ardell.
2 questions. One, I want to go back to Micah's original flag, is if there's a window for proposals. I think that's something that it would be great for the tag to identify earlier than later. And 2, again, just a reminder, multiplex is going into the residential code. And I know Micah keeps bringing up residential code, but there is, I don't know that multiplex housing group has been touching on dwelling size yet, or if they're going to. I'm not tracking that one as tightly. If we are creating a disconnect between the residential code multiplex provisions for dwelling unit size and building code size by this change, I would ask the tag make a recommendation to the residential code tag to align them.
Yeah, that's an important point. I agree.
Thanks.
And then it's a nice thing that these all are happening at the same time. So thank you for flagging that. Okay. On the topic of a window, I guess it raises the question of why does the council open windows for external petitions? In that external process that's not mandated by the legislature, usually there's an expectation that they are more thorough, they have certain cost benefit analysis attached to it, so forth. In this case, is anyone concerned about simply asking for input from this group, from stakeholders, so forth, and just start collecting that and bringing it to the tag? Put it differently, does anyone feel a more formal window is necessary, or we already started the process and can start to ask for information and specifically code change language? My sense is that as we start to lay out these topics, we also can start linking that with actual code language and the revisions and so forth that was raised earlier. Anyone concerned with that?
I'm not on the tag, but I'll agree with you on these things, Todd. Give you some feedback. I think that's great if we do at least ask for, even if it's not a formal window adopted by the SBCC, just some type of outreach or some type of notification somewhere for proposals for these items. I know they're legislatively driven, and it's not necessarily has to be an adopted, voted on window, but some type of outreach would be beneficial for sure.
Yeah, that we're seeking this information. I just don't want to bog down the process and also imply that you need to have everything figured out. If someone has an idea on a section or a specific line in the code that's helpful, we can bring it into this format and start talking about it and do correlation with the other proposals. Elizabeth, please.
Yeah, thanks. With this kind of complex issue, I think it's great the tag gets more feedback, especially from legislative intent perspective, and then also creating some timelines. I think that work can be done without getting outside input, but if you want the best and the brightest to give public comment, I think it is helpful to have a formal open window for people to make proposals. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Wait,
Yeah, I wanted to add on that. I absolutely think we should have an open window for people to give their input on there. It seems like that's a way of being challenged, that we didn't leave it open to the public to make some comments. And every now and a lot of times the open window gives some good feedback, like others have said, that we could actually implement. We should have some kind of open window for someone to put anything in, because I think that's a way of being challenged, that we didn't leave it open for,
Okay.
for other input. So I hope we do leave it open window for people, anybody to make a comment.
okay. It definitely does not hurt, and I'm hearing the formality of it adds value, maybe even just in document control and so forth, right? Okay, go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, sort of connected to that, I think it'll be helpful if you look at the entire process and figure out, what your deadline is to have the code work complete, and then how much time you need to do certain things, and to then figure out where the proposal window fits into there. I know May seems far off now, but there's, some big holiday windows in between there, and things will go by really fast. And so if you don't have a clear plan of what needs to happen and when it needs to happen by, I can see where, if you have a big window, it could cause some problems if you wait until you receive everything back to then start working through things. That'll narrow down your time to work. So just absolutely, not against a proposal window, just I think the single exit multiplex housing tag has found that time goes by quickly, and it helps to have a very focused idea of what needs to get done, and that helps. So thank you.
Okay, I appreciate that also, and I think that was one of my considerations. Maybe the way we can do both is open a window, have a date certain to close that formal petition, if we want to call it that window, but we're not waiting to consider. We can get those posted right away as we receive them, and if we have a meeting during that window, that's okay. We'll start talking about registering and jumping into the subject matter. Is that acceptable to everyone? Okay, opening a window, Dustin, does that take formal action by council, or can we simply declare a window open and start to put a time certain on that?
I would just, for all the group 1 and 2 codes, we've made it with official council action with scheduled, changes and things like that.
Okay.
I think that we do have the ability to make the call for the window right now and be the stewards of that window and how long it's open. But I can definitely follow up and make sure that there's no
Okay.
requirement for any more formal action. But sometimes we get the proposals even if the windows aren't open, and I do try to retain those until we're gathering that information.
Yep, and that's okay. We've invited it, so. Okay, anyone have concern over that, Patrick?
Slightly different. For the dwelling unit size, code work, the, law says you'll convene a technical advisory group. I think if you want to use the IBC, tag, that can make some sense. But I will note that the IBC tag does not have a formal member representing residential or multifamily residential construction, and this will affect that. So it might be nice to possibly make a change to the tag to get some folks from residential construction, since this will affect them.
Patrick, which one were you referring to? You said at the beginning, temporary?
The dwelling unit size. I think
Oh.
the temporary shelter one doesn't say you have to convene a tag.
Okay. Okay, let's think about that one. Go ahead, Micah.
I was just going to ask if Dustin could add to the topic summaries the definitions of dwelling unit types, dwelling unit efficiency, dwelling unit, things like that. I think that it may be a given that we discuss that, but it probably needs to be brought together under the document and discussed as what that looks like, and maybe even what makes up a dwelling unit? How many habitable rooms or room, I guess an efficiency dwelling unit, but is dwelling unit obviously different than an efficiency dwelling unit? And how many rooms does a dwelling unit have to be a dwelling unit? I mean, that's really, it's implied that it would be 2 or more, but since it's not efficiency dwelling unit by definition, but just a question on topics. Definitely the definitions, even if it's not the how many rooms needed. Thanks.
Seems critical, and I think we also need definitions flagged on temporary emergency shelters. What do we know and don't know?
So beyond what we have here as well.
I don't think we called out definition. Oh, you said divine shelter. I see. Maybe you did capture it.
Well,
But
I'm
I
sure
meant what
other
definitions already exist. So we have to define and understand the scope and of the problem, but also what definitions already exist in chapter 2 or elsewhere. And then I would also add, what are there any references, standard references that apply? I think this is for both. And then I don't know if we put on the topic on the temporary emergency shelters of what local ordinance already exist. We should just flag that and try to get a list going. Okay. Okay, I feel like we're getting there. We're nearing an end here. Anyone feel rushed? The opposite? Okay. Well, I think this was useful. I wasn't quite sure if we needed this meeting, but I think we needed some time. Dustin made a good point at the beginning. I don't think it's our intent to have 3-hour meetings unless we really feel we need them. I think we should do short little frequent touch bases, and unless people feel otherwise. I haven't seen if we achieved quorum, if it matters, before we adjourn.
May do another run through.
I don't think we're officially taking action, even though we talked about the window, opening the window, so forth. But we'll come back with an answer on what the best approach is from a council standpoint. Micah, I think you have your hand up.
Just one more item to jump in on. Thank you for the time. Just want to kind of ask, is there a way for the tag or Dustin, and maybe that's something we ask Wabo, Tara, is there a way to get feedback from jurisdictions or designers or somebody on the sizes of current dwelling unit proposals? I know Mr. Neiman and is an architect and has his own firm, and they do smaller stuff in very urban areas, but previously when I've kind of discussed the dwelling unit sizes at the WABO meetings, folks aren't seeing super small dwelling units. And so it'd be nice to get a feel if designers are providing those elsewhere. And Todd, maybe you know that from Spokane, and are you seeing them there and something smaller than 200, 300, and Dustin's already got some information, but that's helpful. But that was my curiosity question.
Yeah, this was part of David's submitted documentation with his proposal, is some information like that. It doesn't say that this is the average unit, but I guess the IBC compliant small units can give some cost and rent information in response to the different changes there. But yeah, there's a way we can get some more information on that, and maybe that reach out to WABO for the local jurisdictions to maybe have that input is where we'll source that.
But I think Mike is also raising a good question here of who's asking for this, what markets are we trying to address? Because obviously if it doesn't exist, then we're not seeing it yet. But who would use this, and how small are we talking?
Yeah.
Okay.
I know Seattle sees small stuff, but other than maybe Tacoma, I think I had one response from it. I think I might have mentioned that before. Shocking was Walla Walla had seen some of this, but other than that, nobody was seeing super small spaces.
Yeah. Okay, good question. Hoyt.
Yeah, we're getting people kind of pushing that limit, getting smaller sizes on multi-unit developments. So
Okay.
it is coming.
Okay. Ardell.
I think again, we have the smallest units in Seattle as permitted across the state, is my understanding, and we do see it as an open market, or within our market. The blurring line that I'm starting to see in the proposals and these changes is what's the size of a sleeping room? When I put a sleeping room at 70 square feet and I have a cooking appliance, so what's cooking, right? It's not defined in the code. And I add a microwave to it. Well, that's a short-term motel room too, right? So there's potentially unintended consequences here around distinctions between sleeping rooms and dwelling units. So I just want to have people keep that in mind. Like, what are we approaching as the smallest? And is there a distinction still to sleeping rooms? And does it matter?
Yeah. I think it's really interesting that we're being asked to look at both of these together, the temporary emergency shelters and the dwelling units, because I think while they're different problems, they're asking similar questions about sleeping, cooking, so forth. Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Good session. I think we'll just we won't go through and see if we have achieved quorum here. We'll just use this as a work session. And what is our next? We're looking at a calendar here. Dustin, when are we thinking the next meeting is?
Well, that's the question I guess I have for the group. Polling seems to be the group favors Thursday at this time, or starting at 1 to be a regular day for these meetings. But my question would be, do we want to target next week for our next meeting, or have these every 2 weeks, or what would be the regular cadence we want to do this? And then we can, I maybe even suggest if we wanted to have them every week, miss next week's meeting to give the legislators some time to see if they have room in their schedules to attend our next meeting too. That might be the prime topic at the next meeting, is to get the legislative intent really nailed down.
And I forget our last meeting. Every week seems pretty intense. Was there a desire to do that, or?
I don't think so. No, but I was just, I'm there for it if that's the desire of the group.
Okay, go ahead, Micah.
I'm just gonna throw out there a large group of folks that participate at the national level will be participating in the ICC Group 2 committee action hearings the 19th, 20th through the end of the month. So if you do have a meeting, then it may be a struggle for a lot of us folks that want to participate, but we'll be there doing that. Thanks.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe we could have a meeting next week to get quorum, open a window for public proposals, and start getting those in. And then that allows folks to be gone for that ICC stuff. And then we might have a body of proposals when everybody is ready to come back from ICC.
Well, that's November, right, Micah? Not next week, not October.
No, that's October 19th
Oh.
through the 30th.
All right, I misunderstood. Okay.
I think the hearings are actually the 22nd through the 30th, but they've got
Sure.
their annual business meetings and stuff like that. So.
Coming up faster than I
Yeah.
thought. Okay, thank you for that. Good, Josh.
I was just gonna say, I'm in favor of weekly meetings if they're 1 hour meetings.
Okay.
If they're going to be longer meetings, then space further apart, but I almost think it would be easier to be productive with a complex topic like this with more frequent short duration meetings than less frequent long duration meetings when our memory's
Okay.
rusty.
Well, we can sprint for a few weeks here if that's the desire. Go ahead, Hoyt.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It would be nice to have weekly meetings and it's shorter. I'm also going to be at the ICC hearings.
Okay.
So but yeah, I mean, I think it's important to get this done. I know it sucks because it's, kind of the holiday season and stuff, but yeah, if we could get the quorum and get some of these decisions made quickly, the better. So
I think that'd be really helpful is actually if we can get as much done before holidays start coming in. Okay, so we're saying we'll schedule next week, the 16th at 1
Yep.
for an
And,
hour. Okay.
And I'll get some placeholders for regular meetings running throughout the rest of the year. And then we'll see where we land as we get there. And then looks like in November, the week of Thanksgiving, we won't have a meeting. And then in December, on December 25th, we won't have a meeting. And if there's other issues for us not having a meeting in those windows, just let me know the availability and we can see if it's prudent to cancel.
Okay. I think it actually will go pretty quickly once we get moving here. So
All right, so I'll get the Outlook placeholders going, and then as far as the business next week is the prime order to make sure that we have quorum and get a public proposal window open.
you get it open and then share out any information we've collected. So, and if you want to provide it based off today's conversation, please submit it to Dustin and we'll get it posted.
Okay.
Okay. That was productive. Thank you, everyone. We will see you next week at 1. We are adjourned.
Thanks. Thank you, Tom.
Everybody.